All right, so now that we have the recorder up and running, I'll go ahead and give you guys a few examples. Okay, there are a few already included in the homework assignment. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is, okay, let's pretend that you are the program that you're writing. Okay, and we just want to know what the program is supposed to do. If the input of the program starts with, okay, I'll give you the tricky cases first. Okay, if the program starts with a 0 as your initial budget, what are you going to do? Yep.
Out of budget.
Terminate right away. You don't even try to attempt to read the next number because you're out of budget already. So you can only go ahead and read the next number if your budget is non-zero. Okay? So let's say we start with a non-zero budget. Let's say we start with $46 as our budget. So as your program, the program will first read 46, and it will remember 46 is your initial budget. In other words, you have $46 to begin with. Then it will attempt to read numbers until one of 3 conditions happen. The 3 conditions are you encounter in a problem reading a number. Okay, you read something, but it's not a number. You don't know what to do with it. You exit the program with a certain code. 2, you encounter in a file, which means the user says, okay, this is it. This is all the expenses. And if you still have money left after all the expenses, you exit with a certain code. The 3rd condition is you run out of budget. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at all 3 possible cases. So I'll just go ahead and say this is case 1, and borrowing the HTML tags or XML. This is how I would group all the cases. So the first case is I read 46, I read 2, I read 4, I read 20. Okay, so this is one particular test case that I can throw at your program. 4 numbers, they're all valid numbers. The question is, how is your program going to exit? What is the exit code in this case? Sorry? It'll be a 1. Well, it depends on what I want you guys to do. So let's go ahead and check with the assignment itself. So all right, so restore, and then we'll go to check out the homework assignment because we want to look at the description of the homework assignment. And this homework assignment is in input and output using files. So when you look at budget, which is the homework assignment, it says right here, if the program exits because we run out of budget, return a 1. That's not what we have, okay? The second case is when we encounter in a file, we still have money left, so we should return a 0 in this case. So when we go back to this test case 1 should have a return value or the exit code of 0. Very good. So let's consider another test case. Okay, case number 2. Start with 46 again, and then the first number right away is ABC. What should be the and then we have some actual numbers after that. Okay, so this is case 2. What should be the exit code of case 2? Okay, we encountered an error. So according to this, we exit because we have an error reading a number. Return -1. Okay. So how do we create a situation where we run out of budget? Well, that's easy. Okay, one way you can do with case 3 is just start with a negative number. If -5 is your initial budget, which it means that you are owing money to begin with, so you automatically run out of budget. So in this case, in case 3, we automatically exit with a code of 1 because we ran out of budget. But you can also have other cases that you can run out of budget. So case 4, you can have an initial budget of $50, and then you spend $20, and then you spend $30. Okay, that you will also run out of money. So in the case of this, where you run out of budget, at the same time you run out of input file, okay, it depends on the prioritization of the description of the homework. So the prioritization here is we check for running out of budget first. So in this case, okay, because we are running out of input file and we are running out of budget at the same time, but because I told you guys to check for running out of budget first, you have to report a 1. Is that okay? Yep.
So are you the one who's going to put like 46 and then just some other values?
Say again?
Are you the one who's going to put like, you know, the initial one, maybe it's 46, and then you're going to have some test cases of it?
The first test case?
Yeah, I'm just giving an example that you case 1. Are you the one who's going to say, okay, you can put a value of 46, and then you run some test cases for it?
This is a number that I'm inputting in the file too.
Yeah, are you the one on this program that's going to do that?
I'm not understanding your question.
No, are you the one who's going to input that value of 46 for the testing report?
This is just an example. I can use 460, I can
Yeah,
use
that's
6.
why I'm asking if you are the one who's going to put the 46 or any other number that you want. And then
You have to kind of come up with your own test cases. I'm just showing you some of the examples. But the initial budget is in the input file. You have to type it in or specify as the first number in the file. Okay? Because I think that part is described here. So your program has to, whenever it says read, it means use Scanf to read. So the budget, initial budget, you have to read it from the input file. Yep.
The Scanf, how would you check to see if Scanf is returning end of file?
Aha! Well, that's a good question. Let's go ahead and read some notes, okay? Because it's all in input and output using files. So when you read this portion, which is getting input from a file using Scanf, that is where you find all that information. Okay. And I think. Okay, let me see. Okay, so Scanf returns a value. This return value can be negative to mean something is wrong reading the file. It can be non-negative that indicates the number of items actually read. Since the format string only requests to read one integer, the return value can be 0 to mean no integer is read, or 1 to mean integer is successfully read. Okay, so end of file is a special condition. It is going to be negative. Okay. Now, how do I know it's going to be negative? How do I write a program to test that theory? Anyone? Does anyone want to give it a just
Scanf.
Okay? So you write a very simple program. There's only one thing it does is to try to read an integer, right? And then you give it an empty file to read, so it has to report back and say, hey, there's nothing here, end of file. Is that making any sense? Sorta. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and make that happen and see if that that will make answer your questions. Yes.
If formatted scan is called without any arguments, is it just going to return the value it gets?
No. Okay. So I can see where the question is. So what you want to do is to do a man scanf. Okay. Because the value that it is reading is not a return value. It is read into the variable that you supply. Okay, the %x, for instance, is specifying, okay, whatever you read, put it into variable x, and here it is. Okay, so this is, you can go look up the man pages. I think the virtual machine actually has the man page installed already. So this is the man page, and when you look at what it does, this really describes the whole thing, of what it does. But instead of just reading the man page, what we can do is to write a simple program. I think we did one last time too. To just do that. Okay, scanf.c, cpp, doesn't matter. It's the same. Okay. You have to make sure that you include stdio.h because this is the header file that will define the prototype of the functions that we need to use, which is just scanf itself, main. Now this program is just a useful program to play with, but it doesn't really do your homework. Okay, so you might want to keep that in mind. So all I want to do is to have two integers, one is x and one is y. X stores the return value of scanf. I'm going to read a base 10 integer that can be positive or negative, and I'm reading that into y. So this is the statement to basically separate the return value. The return value is stored in variable x, but the value that I just read, if I successfully read one, is going to be stored in y. Yes, question?
Okay, so the return value from scanf, if you were to call scanf but not have any arguments, it's still return a value for a read, or is it just going to?
What do you mean by use call scanf without a value to read?
I mean, just without the formatter and say.
Without the format, it wouldn't know what to do. So you cannot give it an empty format. You have to give it some format that has a placeholder. %d is a placeholder that says, okay, I need to read an integer, and that's what it's saying. All right, so the next line is just return a 0. So this entire program doesn't do anything that is observable without GDB, but with GDB, this is a really useful program for testing, what is going to happen if I try to do this. Yep.
Why did you make one of the parameters?
Ampersand?
Yeah.
Because scanf needs to know where y is, and it doesn't do pass by reference. This is coming from the days before C++. So scanf does not understand what is passing by reference.
So it needs to look at the actual memory code.
Yes. So you need to give it the exact location where y is, and this is how we give scanf the address of y.
So that's how it reads y, basically.
Say again.
It reads y off the memory code.
Okay, ampersand is called the address of operator. So ampersand y means the address of y. So we are giving the subroutine scanf the address of y. So in case scanf can actually read an integer, the value of the integer is going to be stored in y because scanf knows where y is. Okay, that's a good question. All right. So let's go ahead and compile and run this program. G++-C- G is useful. Scanf.cpp. G++-O, so we can have the actual executable from the object file. And then we do a GDB scanf1. List the program. Okay, so nothing is really too exciting at this point. What I will also do, and you should do the same, is create sample files as input into this program. So this way you're not relying on the command line to type the actual input. So I would create the file is just empty. Okay, to create an empty file is pretty easy. You can say touch and then the file name. And what touch does is to create a file if it doesn't exist yet. Okay. So if I do a ls-l, to basically look at all the details of this file, the size of this file is a 0. Okay, so this file is empty to begin with. You encounter end of file right away. Okay, so getting back to this box here. Now, when I run the program, first of all, I want to put a breakpoint. I want to put a breakpoint on line 8 after the scanf, and well, might as well put one on line 7 too. Run the program, but when you run the program, you can use the redirect symbol, which is a less than symbol, to say, oh, I want to use the content of this file to be the standard input file into this program when I run it like this. Are there any questions about run, but with the less than symbol? Okay. So what you want to do is to create your own test cases and store those test cases into text files. So this way you can reuse the same test case over and over again. You don't have to worry about, oh, am I testing all of the test cases? No, you have all the test cases stored in individual files. So I run the program, press the enter key. Now I'm on line 7. On line 7, it will attempt to read an integer and put it into X. The only thing I'm really interested in at this point is I want to know the value of X before. I want to know the value of Y before. They're all kind of random-ish, kind of numbers, which is fine, okay? Because this is before I execute line 7. I would use continue to continue execution, and now I'm on line 8. So the question now is, what is going to be in Y and what is going to be in X? What do you think? Well, let's start with Y, okay? What do you think is going to be in Y? Because what scanf is trying to do is to say, I want to read the standard input file and find a base 10 integer, store the value of the base 10 integer into Y. Was there a value in this file?
No.
No, the file is empty to begin with. So what do you think what do you think is the value of Y?
Drawing some random numbers since it hasn't been initialized.
Exactly, it's the same random value as before, okay? Because it wasn't touched. Scanf was not able to read anything that is an integer. So if I say print Y, it gives us exactly the same gibberish as before, because I simply was not able to read anything into Y. So now the bigger question is, what do you think is in X? Okay, in other words, the return value of scanf, which is not the value that it has read, which is, it returns the status, okay? What is the status that is going to store in X? That's the return value of scanf. So let's, it's not going to be 0, okay? So let's look up the return value of scanf. Okay, let me look up. Okay, right here. Okay, these functions, including scanf, returns the number of input items successfully matched and assigned, which can be fewer than provided for, even 0 in the event of an early matching failure. But this is not, we are not seeing an early matching failure. If I supply ABC, that's a early matching failure, because I'm looking for a number, but instead I saw something else. But I did see something. In this case, it is what we call end of file, which is EOF. The value EOF is returned if end of file is reached before either the first successful conversion or matching failure occurs. Okay? In this case, did we have a successful conversion? Were there any integers in the file? No. Was there anything else in the file so that it can cause a matching failure? No. So EOF is going to be returned. EOF is also returned if a read error occurs, in which case the error indicator for the stream is set. Okay. So what we want to do is to say, okay, tell me what is the mysterious value in X at this point. It turns out to be -1. So when scanf returns -1, it simply means I have reached the end of file. There's nothing else to read. Is that okay so far? All right. So we have one case where it will come back with a code of -1. So what I will do next is I will say gibberish.txt, which is a non-number. Okay, so I'll give you something that is not a number. In fact, I'll make it really confusing because I'm going to spell out a number which is not a decimal number. Is that making any sense? Okay, so you see this number, or you see this word as a value. What do you think the computer sees this? When the computer is asked specifically to read a base 10 number, is this a base 10 number? Nope. So instead it will have a matching failure. Okay? So when you ask for a single integer and it has a matching failure, do you remember what scanf is supposed to return? Not -1. We already saw -1. So we get back to the error code here. Okay, these functions return the number of input items successfully matched and assigned. If that's the input, if ONE is the input, will it match the base 10 number that we're looking for? It does not match. So what is the number of items that is actually matched? 0. So that means scanf will return a value of 0 when we attempt to read ONE as a base 10 number. Okay? All right. But let's go ahead and test it. Okay? So I'm going to save this file, which is called gibberish.txt. Go back to the debug session, run the program again, but this time I'm going to read my input from gibberish.txt. In other words, I am not typing ONE as the input on the fly when I run this program. I am going to rely on the text file gibberish, which already is edited, to pretend to be the standard input file. Is that okay so far? Okay. So we press the enter key. Okay. So we start from the very beginning. And on line 7, once again, we print X, we print Y. They're both gibberish like last time. Continue execution. Now we're on line 8. Okay, first of all, we want to look at what is Y. What do you think is in Y? Did we successfully read anything from Scanf? No. So that means Y is still the same as before because we could not read anything that is actually a base 10 number. What do you think is in X? How many items was matched? Scanf was supposed to read one single base 10 number. Did we read, how many items did we actually end up reading? 0. So that means Scanf should return a value of 0. X should have a value of 0. And that is the case. Yep.
Will comparisons with the Scanf when it's given format, will that move the character?
Okay, Scanf returns an integer. In other words, the invocation of Scanf can take the place of any integer. You can use the invocation of Scanf as the right-hand side of an equal or assignment operation. You can compare directly. You can compare Scanf with certain things directly.
But will it move the character to the meter to speed forward in the stream?
Yes, it would. So you don't want to read it multiple. You don't want to call Scanf multiple times just for comparison purposes. If you want to compare the value of the return value of Scanf, you want to store that first and then do your comparison. Okay. So now we have seen -1. We have seen 0. Let's go ahead and see what will make it return a value of 1. In other words, if you read this description here, these functions return the number of input items successfully matched and assigned. So that means if we actually supply a base 10 number, it would return a value of 1 because it asks for your base 10 number, I'll give you one base 10 number. So getting back to the other window here, we'll say this is a number, okay? So it can be any number, it can be negative. So we'll give it -67. And we go back to the GDB session here, rerun the program from the beginning, and this time we are redirecting the file number.txt into the program, running from the beginning. Print X, print Y. You can see both of these numbers are reset back to their gibberish value from before. Continue execution. We get to line 8. Print Y first. What do you think is in Y at this point? Well, first of all, did we specify a particular base 10 number in the file called number.txt? Okay, let's double check. Does that look like a number to you in base 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so when Scanf attempts to read a single base 10 number, it would have been successful, right? And because the return value of Scanf is the number of items that it was able to read successfully, what do you think is the value stored in X in the GDB session? Okay, we print Y first. Okay, Y is -67, which is the value of the number, the value of the item in the file. But when you print X, it would be 1 because we did successfully read one item as specified, as requested. Are we doing okay so far with the return value of Scanf? When it's going to return -1, when it's going to return 0, and when it's going to return 1. Yep.
So our program, is it supposed to print out?
It's not going to print anything.
Okay.
Your program does not print a single thing. All it does is to read numbers and then exit with a certain exit code.
Okay. And the only function that we're supposed to use
Is Scanf. But you're defining, but you can,
My bad.
right. You can define your own subroutines if you want to. If you think, oh, okay, if I define this subroutine, it will make my program easier to read, go ahead, okay? But the only function you should use outside of your own subroutines is Scanf.
So we can make subroutines
You can make subroutines if you want to, yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'm trying to get the parameters of what the assignment.
Okay. Is that
It's
okay?
kind of confusing on what I'm supposed to use and what I'm not really supposed to use, kind of. Is there anything I'm not supposed to do?
I was trying to make it very specific when I typed the homework assignment, but it may not turn out that way. Okay, so the homework description says use scanf and no other functions. Well, that's kind of saying everything that we need to say. Read the base 10 number that is signed as the initial balance. Read consecutive base 10 signed integers as expenses. Stop reading when we run out of budget, we encounter end of file, or there's an error reading any number, and that includes the initial budget or the initial balance. So the first number, if it is not a number, you exit right away. It's like, well, I wasn't given a budget, it's time to get out. Depending on why the program stops, the main function returns a different value as follows. Okay, so these are the values returned by main. Are we doing okay so far? Are there?
So the main function returns it, not scanf returns it?
The scanf has its own return value, but main will specify these specific return values depending on why you stop. Instead of blindly returning a 0 in main, now main is going to return 1, 0, or -1, depending on why you stop.
So with the program that you just had, you could do something like return X, for example.
It's not going to be that simple because this doesn't match. The program exits because we run out of budget. It returns a 1 in that case. When we encounter end of file, it returns 0 in main, but scanf is going to return a -1 in this case, right? Because the only reason why you can encounter end of file is everything else is red. But when you encounter end of file, scanf itself returns -1. We just saw that. Okay, so you have to do some translation between the return value of scanf and what main is supposed to return.
Okay.
It's not a straight 1-to-1 for sure. And then the last case is also the same thing. If the program exits because there's an error reading a number, scanf returns a 0 in this case, but main has to return a -1. So you have to use a conditional statement of some kind to determine what you're supposed to return from main itself.
We don't have to provide like any area for them to initialize a value or anything.
You have to
do that through GDB.
For GDB?
Yeah. You'll test that through GDB.
Okay, the way I test this program is no longer going to I will not set breakpoints within your program. I'm just going to test your program entirely from the outside. So I will see what kind of value you're returning from your own main. I give you a file to process. Your program exits with a certain code. I check whether that code is what it is supposed to be. That's how this particular program is going to be tested. Okay? All right, next thing. Okay, so what we want to do is to say, okay, but how do we test this program? How do we debug this program? Well, first of all, let's see what you are allowed to use. You can use any statement, any expression, any number of autolocal variables, and define and invoke functions of your own. So that means you have a great deal of flexibility in this case. What kind of statements are we talking about? Okay, the simplest kind would be the expression statements, because you will need assignment somewhere in this program. Okay, I'm not going to tell you why you will need it, but you will need it. Yep.
Scanf, it says here that it does produce the event of a matching failure, but in the event of a read error, it returns a file, but it also returns a file.
Okay.
But it does also say it sets the error indicator to error, so we're using that to determine if it's a read error, or we're just assuming there's something in the first time error.
You just have to use the return value of scanf itself. You don't have to look at the error number. All right, so that means you can use any statements. Do you think you have a need of any type of loop?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you will have any need of conditional statements?
Yes.
Okay, so there you go. Okay, you can usually substitute conditional statements using ternary operators. So if you want to exercise that option, it is yours. You can define any number of auto local variables. Okay, and I think you will need at least 3. Okay, 1 to store the return value of Scanf, 1 to store the initial budget, and 1 to store the expense that you're reading. Okay, so you will need at least 3 variables in this program. You can define / invoke any function of your own. Okay, so you can define and write your own functions and call those functions any way you want. Okay, this entire program, by the way, can be done with recursion too. So for those of you who are really obsessed with recursion now, you can do this using recursion. Okay, I can see certain people are going to give it a try. Okay. However, you can only invoke scanf as a function that is supplied to you. Okay, so the only external function you can use is scanf. The source code of this program should be in main.cpp in a subdirectory budget in your home directory. When this is done, run the following command, blah, 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 blah. So that's the usual stuff to create the file that you turn in for submission purposes. And I have certain test cases here. Okay, so you can see in this case, it returns a code of 1 because we run out of budget. Okay, by the time we read and process the expense of $100, the balance would have gone negative at that point. So that's why the program should exit with a code of 1 because we ran out of money. In this case, we will exit with a code of -1 because we attempt to read an expense item and instead we read a number, and as a result, it returns -1. In this case, the input file only has 2 numbers. The initial budget is $76, but the expense is only $26, so we got $50 left. But that's the end of the expenses. Okay, so because you have a positive balance at this point, the program would exit with a code of 0 in this case. So these are test cases already. Okay, they may not be the exhaustive test cases, but I suggest you start with these as your test cases. Okay, the best way to test this program is to create test input files like what I did earlier. Use redirection to redirect the test input file as standard input file to the program. This can be done outside of GDB as follows. Assume the executable is main and the test input file is like this. This is on the command line, not in GDB itself. If you want to do it in GDB, you have to do it like this, just like what I did earlier in class. The next question is, how do I know the return value of main? Okay, so what we'll do is going to change this program so that it will kind of reflect. Okay, so the return value of the function of main is the return value of scanf in this case. Now, because we are only using x in this case to store the value of scanf, this program can also be written a little bit simpler, saying that there's no need for variable x to really exist in this case. Okay, but what I want to do is to say, but how do we know the exit code of this program? This is the purpose of this particular program here. So we'll do a G++ -c-g scanf1.cpp -o scanf1 scanf1.o. Alright, so the next thing we'll do is to rerun the program, but on the command line itself, not in GDB in this case. Redirect the input in from empty.txt. Press the enter key. It doesn't show a single thing. Main is supposed to return what in this case? It encounters end of file. What does scanf returns when it encounters end of file? You only got 3 values to consider: -1, 0, or 1. Okay? Is it 1? Did we read a number?
No, it's going to be -1.
-1 is correct. Okay, but it doesn't print anything because the return value or the exit code of a program is not shown when you run the program. So how do we know the exit code? Well, you read the homework assignment. It says on the command line, you can use this particular command to know the exit code of the previous command. So you say echo $? And it says it returns 255. It doesn't look like a -1, but that's -1. Okay, so when you see 255, it is the same thing as -1. Okay. What is the representation of -1?
255.
It's all ones, okay? And 255 is all ones as well, using only 1 byte. So when you see the exit code being 255, it is -1. Okay, so this is -1. All right, so we'll go ahead and try another file. This time we'll redirect from gibberish. And tell me again what is in gibberish. I think some of you still remember the content of gibberish. It's ONE1, right? I spell out 1 as a word, okay, which is not a base 10 number. So when I redirect that into the execution of scanf and look at the exit code, what should it return?
-1 or 255.
No, not -1. It attempts to read a base 10 number. There's something in the input file, but it's not base 10. It returns a 0 in this case because it failed to read a single item. So the exit code is in fact 0. And the last one is to redirection from the other file, which is actually a number. I think it's just called number.txt. So this time it did successfully read a number. What is the exit code of scanf in this case? What do you think scanf returned in this case? 1, okay? It is not the value of the number that it read. It is the number of items that it has read. But since I only requested to read 1 item, and it read that 1 single item, so the return value of scanf is 1. Okay, so we press the enter key, and in fact, the return code or the exit code of this particular program is 1. Yep.
So basically, if we were to do it, to match the homework assignment, correct? The one that would give us 255 would have to have a number or like letters in it, and the one that gave us 0 would have to have a file.
Correct. It will encounter end of file before you run out of budget.
So you need to somehow translate 0 into -1 and -1 into 0.
It's not going to be that simple. It is not
That's
going to be.
basically what we gotta do.
Right, you have to make use of the return value of scanf in order to determine what main itself is going to return. But it's not going to be just it's not just from one single scanf. You have to do scanf potentially repetitively. Okay?
So the 255 one, is that one going to be consistent if you kept asking the input? Would it still come out the same?
Say that again?
What you're doing there, if you were to do scanf txt,
Yeah.
that would come out the same, right? Would it come out like a different number or anything? Would it be consistent?
You mean for this test program or for your homework assignment?
No, for this test program.
For this test program, the only way you can get 255, or basically it's -1, is when there's nothing in the file. Because it is only attempting to read 1 single item. Okay. Is that okay so far? Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I'm gonna. Yep, go ahead.
I was just remembering from the homework, or not the homework, the reading assignment where it was talking about how to print a value, and you had the...
There's no printing of value of any kind.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying it had something involving strings where you could convert strings to decimal by adding the, like, less than decimal. Can you kind of do the similar thing when you're inputting stuff into our function in case we had a list of values that were hexadecimal and we wanted to have a decimal because that's how our program read things? Like, could you just put, like, gibberish in it, or can you put, like, in decimal in gibberish and that would work, or no?
Okay. Do you want to change this program to?
No, not at all. I'm just saying, like, from when you had like the less than simple gibberish and you use that as the input for the scanf, right?
Okay.
Could you just put could you put decimal and then gibberish and it would
Yes.
convert it to decimal for the scanf?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so you bring up a really good question. The question is, what if we have 2 consecutive scanfs? So we'll have this, we'll have a second one, but I only return the value of the second one. Okay? So let's find out what this one is going to do. Okay? Okay, I think that's okay. So G++-C-G scanf.cpp -O scanf1 scanf1 All right, so this time we can specify, well, let's keep the same test file as last time, okay? So we'll go ahead and say scanf1 redirect from empty.txt. Okay, so the big question is, if the first scanf encounters end of file, which means there's nothing in the file, what do you think the second scanf will encounter? Same thing, end of file, okay? So we'll test this again, okay? So we'll say echo $, and in fact it has the same return value because you cannot read past end of file. When you get to end of file, any attempt to read after that will continue to encounter end of file. Is that okay? All right. Let's take a look at the other one. So we'll take a look, well, in fact, we'll copy gibberish into a new file. Okay, so we'll copy into gibberish 1.txt. Okay, now this one's going to be interesting. Gibberish.txt, gibberish1.txt is going to have a 1 after the 1. In other words, I spell out the word ONE and then I actually give it a number 1. This is the first version. And then we'll also copy gibberish1.txt to gibberish2.txt. But in gibberish2.txt, we'll make one change. I'll put the 1 before the 1. I'll put the digit 1 before ONE. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and run the program, scanf1 using gibberish1. Okay, and obviously it doesn't show you the code just yet. So the question is, what is it supposed to return? The content of this file. So go ahead.
Should return 1 because of the rate of 1 digit based on.
Well, all right. So the input is like this, right? That's gibberish1. We have ONE spelled out, and then we have the digit 1.
Oh, I thought you said
I think that's the one. Let me just double check.
Do the 1 first.
Yeah, it spells out ONE first, and then the digit 1. Okay. All right. So we have two scanfs in this particular program. The first one, I don't really care about the return value. I only use the second scanf as the return value of main itself. Okay. The first scanf is going to start right here. Okay, start with lowercase o. Okay, I'm just going to use this to highlight where we're focusing. So it will start with lowercase o and say, can this be the beginning of a base 10 number? That's what the first call to scanf is going to do. What is the answer? It cannot be, right? So what scanf is going to do is to stay in place. Okay, it doesn't do a single thing. It simply says, oh, the letter that I'm looking at cannot be the beginning of a base 10 number, and therefore I'm not going to do a single thing. That's what the first scanf is going to do. Is that okay? And as a result of that, it returns a value of 0, which we toss away immediately. The second scanf, where is it going to start? The same place. And what kind of conclusion is it going to come to? The same conclusion. So in this case, for gibberish1, the program is going to return the value of 0, not 1. It's going to be 0 because it will fail in both attempts. So we'll go ahead and double check. Okay, so we'll run it again because after I do a vim, it would have changed the exit code. So now we say, oh, okay, it did come back with a 0. Is that making any sense? Okay, so what you need to do, or what you need to remember, is when scanf cannot find what it's looking for, it doesn't advance. Okay, it does not say, oh, I'll just skip this character. No, it does not skip anything when it cannot process it. Is that okay? Yep.
So all you know, we have return for this content for the main too.
Say again?
So we have the return for this content, but then the return for the main.
You have to return.
What I'm saying is we have two return, right? The first one is for this con, and then the other one for the
You
main.
can use any number of returns that you want, okay? But the bottom line is your program, the return value of main has to be as specified in the homework assignment. All right, so let's go ahead and test gibberish 2. Okay, now gibberish 2 is a little bit different because we have the digit 1, a line feed, and an ONE. Okay, so let's go ahead and reverse that and see what's going to happen here. So we have 1 and an ONE here. Okay, the digit 1. The first scanf will encounter the digit 1, and it was asked to read a base 10 number. Is the digit 1 a base 10 number? Yep, it is. So what it will do is it will process this. The line feed actually doesn't do a single thing. Okay, it's kind of like a white space. So the first scanf will return a value of 1. And then what it is going to do? Will it advance? This time it will, because it successfully read 1. So the next scanf is quote unquote going to start with the lowercase o character. But it's looking for a base 10 number. Is that a base 10 number? Okay, so what do you think the second scanf is going to return? 0. Yep. So in this case, it will also come back with a 0. Okay, let's try the next one. The next one is number, which has a single number. Okay, so we'll run it first, but then we'll think about what it's going to do in this case. Okay, number as a file, or number.txt as a file, is -7, 67, and then a line feed character, which is not visible to us. So the first scanf is going to start with the negative symbol, okay, or the minus symbol. Can the minus symbol be the beginning of a base 10 number that is signed, that can go positive or negative? Yes, it can. 6, 7, these three will be processed as one single value to represent, guess what, -67. Not a problem. That's what the first scanf is going to do. It returns a value of 1 because there is exactly one base 10 number that it was able to read successfully. Then it will stop at the end of line character here. The second scanf says, oh, give me another base 10 number. Is there another base 10 number? The line feed character is not a problem. It's simply treated as white space. So the second scanf will process the line feed character and go like, I've got to skip this. And what does it see after it skips the line feed character? End of file. So the second scanf will report that it is encountering end of file. So as a result, main itself is going to return -1 because in this particular case, main returns the return value of the second scanf. So what we should see here is not -1 because it is going to be 255. Okay, it looks like 255. Are there any questions with this one? Yep.
Can I see the source code again?
Sure. So here comes a question. Now that we have the source code displayed here, how can I make this program return a value of 1? Without changing the source code itself, but I do want the entire program to return a value of 1. How can I do that? Can someone describe an input file that will trigger this program to return a value of 1? This is the row sheet for today. What if I put 2 numbers in the file? Then the first call is going to be successful, but the second call is going to be successful as well. In fact, if I give you a file that has at least 2 actual numbers, it doesn't even matter what is the rest of the file, because all we need to do is to make sure the second call is also successful. Okay, so let's give it a try, and this time I'll call this test file 2 numbers, 2 numbers.txt, and give it 2 numbers. It can be 23 and 45 or 56 like this, with only a space to separate the 2 numbers. That's fine. You can use line feed if you want to, but this will work too. So I will do, I'll run the program scanf1, redirect the input from 2 numbers.txt, and then look at the exit code. and it is 1 indeed. Okay. Are there any questions about the return value of Scanf? No questions? All right. So before you actually write the homework assignment, you might want to simplify the problem a little bit and just give yourself a kind of modified problem, such as I'll keep reading numbers until I encounter either an file or anything that is not a number. I'm not going to do any calculations. There's no budget, no expenses. I just keep reading numbers until there are no numbers to read. Okay?
These numbers should be heading up, right? Because it's something in budget.
Sorry?
So these numbers would be heading right, and then being subtracted from the budget.
In the homework assignment, yes. But I would, if I were to start with this homework assignment, I would try out different things first, just to focus on, what Scanf is going to do, what kind of logic I need, just to do certain things without the calculations. Any other questions about the homework assignment? No questions? Yep.
Were you still deciding on whether or not you were gonna extend the date?
Yeah, I think last time I said I would extend it, right?
Yeah.
I think I said that. So I'll give you, 1 week from today.
Okay.
That's going to be the due date. Because I think we have finished all the topics now for Scanf, and you should have enough material to start with this homework assignment. So let's go ahead and change the settings. So we'll change the due date to November 2nd. There we go. There we go. Okay, so just because I changed the due date, so you have 5 more days or so, doesn't mean that you can start like the day before or the hour before. Some of you can, okay, but I think in general, what you want to do is to get started early, okay? Because there's plenty of time, to work on this homework assignment. So make sure that you test it with all the different test cases. Yeah, go ahead.
This is a different question. When is the next?
The next test is going to be around week 12 or so. And I think this is week 9. So we are about two or 3 weeks off. Yes?
I'm sorry, it's my fault for being late. Just real quickly, why did you change the homework to later?
Because on last Wednesday, I said that I was not able to finish all the topics and
Right.
to describe Scanf, and I just did.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yes.
Would you mind if I signed attendance? I got into it as soon as I could.
If you can find the attendance, go
Okay.
ahead and sign it. Yeah, but it's being passed on that side to
Okay.
wait until we come back here. Alrighty. So are there any other questions about Scanf? No questions about Scanf? Alright. Okay, so what we'll do is we are going to go back to the topics. It's because we are done with Scanf here. The next topic, now remember, in your program, there's no need to print anything, okay? If you want to print something for debugging purposes, I personally do not like printf for debugging purposes. I use GDB for debugging, but if you want to put in like extra code, just to print gibberish out, for debugging purposes, it's okay with me, because all I really care is to return the exit code of your program. So you got to make sure the exit code of your program is correct. Oh, I forgot to do one thing though. The one thing I forgot to do is to show you how to use GDB and still be able to find the exit code of your program. So we'll say GDB scanf1, and we already said that you can run with redirection inside GDB. So we'll say redirect from toNumbers.txt as the standard input file into this program and run the program. And the program has exited. The first thing you might notice is, hey, the exit code is right here. It's 1. But what if you scroll off the screen enough that you cannot remember what it was? Well, you can also say print dollar exit code. I think there's an underscore. Okay, so this will do the same thing as echo dollar question mark on the command line. So inside GDB, this is how you look at the exit code of the last time you run the program. And outside of GDB, you say echo space dollar question mark to do the same thing. Any questions? Okay, no questions. Alrighty. So with that out of the way, the next thing we'll do is to talk about error checking and handling. Because in your program, you did one of these two. Which one do you do in your program? Well, the program that you're going to turn in next Monday. You check, right? Okay. But did you do anything to try to recover the content of the file? Nope. You just say, I'm quitting, right? If I see anything other than a base 10 number, I'm going to quit. Okay. That's not handling. Well, I guess you can call it like minimum handling. It's like, okay, I'm just going to quit. But what if you're dealing with an actual program or dealing with something that requires, the handling, which means, oh, let's go ask the user again if it is not a number. So what you can do in this case is to do something like this, okay? So you want to clear the character that is not a base 10 number. All right, so what we'll do is I'm going to show you a different program that does only one thing, okay? Scan char.cpp. And don't forget the pound include stdio.h, because this particular header file is required if you want to use Scanf. All right. So what I'll do is we're introducing the term character, and I'll just call this a ch. But right away, I'll just explain what a char is. Can someone tell me what a char is? What is a character? It's basically one byte in a file. Okay, a character is one byte in a file. Okay, but it's also can also be seen as a 8-bit integer. Okay, so you can choose to interpret it either way. Okay, all right. So this is the same thing as an integer, 8-bit integer, 8-bit integer. All right, so what I'll do is I'm going to call scanf again. In fact, I'll do a return here. Let's see. Okay, this is what I'll do. I'm going to use X to store the result of scanf, but the format string of scanf is no longer %d, it's %c. And then I specify the address of ch as the second argument. And return X. Here. All right. So this is the entire program. You can see how this program resembles the previous one, with the only exception that the format string is no longer a %d, it is now a %c. Okay. And then the other difference is instead of having y as an integer, I have ch or char being a character. Okay. All right. So how are you going to find out what %c really stands for? It's a placeholder because it starts with a %. So %d stands for a integer, a base 10 integer. What do you think %c is going to be representing? A character. Okay, it's saying a character. Give me a character. That's what it's asking. Okay, and what are you going to do to find out all the different format strings of scanf? It's already on this one of the tabs here. Go to this page and scroll up a little bit, and right here you have everything that you would need to know. Conversions. The following type modifier can appear in the conversion specification. Okay, we need to look for conversion specification first. Okay, the following conversion specifiers are available. So they all start with the % symbol, okay? Matches. If you specify %, you're basically looking for the % symbol itself. Okay, but that's not useful to us. We start with d, lowercase d matches an optionally signed decimal integer, which means the sign is optional. You can say 67, you can say positive plus 67, they mean exactly the same thing. Or you can precede it with a negative symbol, okay, or the minus symbol to mean it is negative. Uppercase D is LD, which is long decimal. We're not going to deal with this. O, lowercase o is octal. Lowercase u is unsigned integer, so a sign cannot be with the number. Lowercase x is hexadecimal. Uppercase x is the same as lowercase x. There's no real difference between those two. F, E, G, uppercase E, and A, they're all basically reading floating point numbers. We are not dealing with those either. Lowercase s matches a string. We're not dealing with that. Hey, this seems to be what we are looking at. Okay, so look at the documentation. Matches a sequence of characters whose length is specified by the maximum field, which has a default of 1. Since I did not specify the maximum field, it is just 1. The next pointer must be a pointer to a character. Okay, that's what the ampersand n is about. It turns a variable into a pointer to the variable. There must be enough room for all the characters. Since we're only reading one is enough. The usual skip of leading white space is suppressed. In other words, we will actually read white spaces in this case. To skip white space first, use an explicit space in the format. Okay, but the bottom line is we are reading characters. Okay, we're reading characters one by one with the new program. Okay, so let me show you the program again. This is the program that we are dealing with. Are there any questions about the program before we run it? No questions? All right. So if there are no questions, I'm going to run this program just to see what it does. Okay, it only calls scanf exactly once. Go. All right. And to really find out what this program does, it's best to run it inside GDB, because not only do I want to know the return value of scanf, I also want to know what is it going to put into CH. So we say GDB scanchar, list the program, put a breakpoint on line 8, put another breakpoint on line 9, run the program with some kind of redirection. We'll start with the stupid file called empty, because it is in fact empty. Okay, so we run the program. We are on line 8 right now. We take a look at what is in X, some kind of random gibberish. We say what is in CH, also some kind of gibberish. Okay, so that's okay, because neither variable is initialized at this point. We are just about to call scanf. Continue execution. It stops on line 9. The first question is, what do you think is in CH at this point? I just read from the empty file, which has nothing. So the question is, did I actually read anything from an empty file? Nope, you cannot read past end of file. With an empty file, you start with end of file. So that means I could not read a single thing, which also means if I use variable ch to store whatever this scanf is supposed to read, it is left alone. Okay, it has not changed. So print ch will give us exactly the same value as before, but what about x, which is storing the return value of scanf? Since we encountered end of file, scanf returns what? Scanf in this case returns one of 3 possible values. Okay, it was asked to read a single character, which means if it successfully reads a character, it returns a value of 1. If it cannot read, if there is something in a file but it's not a character, which is not possible, it will return a 0. And if it's an end of file, what does it return? -1. Very good. So in this case, should it return -1, 0, or 1? Well, are we encountering end of file? The file is empty. If the file is empty, we encounter end of file to begin with. So we did encounter end of file, which means the return value is going to be -1. Is that okay so far? right. So we'll go ahead and run it again, but this time we'll redirect from another file. We'll redirect from gibberish. Gibberish.txt has O-N-E or 1 spelled out as a word. Yep.
Why was it -1 and not 255? Because X is signed?
The 255 only shows when you look at the return value from the shell.
Okay.
Yep. Which is kind of odd, but that's the way it's arranged. Okay, so we run the program again, but this time we are redirecting the input file from gibberish, which has O-N-E spelled out as 1. Okay. Once again, we stop at line 8, and printing X and CH at this point is kind of pointless because we kind of know that it's going to be the same gibberish as last time. We continue execution, and we want to find out what is in CH and what is in X at this point. All right, so can someone tell me what is going to be in CH? First of all, the question is, if O-N-E and a carriage return line key character is in the file of gibberish.txt, we'll go ahead and show that on the whiteboard. So the file itself has O-N-E and then the line key character as one thing, as one byte, okay? Oh, by the way, what is the ASCII code of lowercase o?
111. 111.
111 in base 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so in hexadecimal, what is it going to be?
6F.
6F, okay? 6F?
Yep, 6F.
Yeah, that's one. Well, let me count. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. Okay, you're right. It's the 15th character, so that's why it is 6F. Okay, so the ASCII code of lowercase o is 6F. What does that mean? That means we use the binary code 01101111. These 8 bits represents lowercase o as a character. Is that okay? Okay. This is the very first byte of the entire file. And scanf is going to start from the very beginning of the file, which means it's going to read this into CH. So when we say print CH, we should see lowercase o, but it also shows the actual ASCII code, which is 111, which is in base 10. If you do not like 111, you can always specify, tell me what it is in base 16 or hexadecimal. It is 6F. Are there any questions about this particular run of scanchar? Because we failed on this file before. Why did we fail last time and it's not failing this time? In other words, if I say print X, what do you think it's going to print? How many items was I able to read into CH successfully? Okay, first of all, did I read anything into CH?
Yep.
Yes. How many things did I read into CH? 1. So since scanf is supposed to return the number of items that it was able to read successfully, what do you think scanf returns and store into X? Exactly 1. Okay, double check. That really is the case. But hold on a second here. The program that we were dealing with before failed on this file. That's why it's called gibberish.txt. Why did it fail last time and not fail this time?
You specified character in the strings?
Because this time I'm supposed to read in a character, right? And there's at least 1 character read, so it's successful. What about last time? What was I reading last time? Integers. Because of the %d, it is trying to read a base 10 number. Lowercase o cannot be the beginning of a base 10 number. That's why it failed last time, but this time, since we are only reading characters 1 by 1, it could not fail. Okay, next test case. So let's go ahead and read this again, but this time we'll read from number.txt. Number.txt has a negative number. I believe it is -67. Those are the 3 characters in that file. So we'll start this program. At this point, we're not going to print anything before the scanf. Continue. Now we can go ahead and say, did we get anything? Yes, we got 1 character. What did we read into CH? What do you think?
2D. 2D.
2D, which is the minus symbol, okay? Because the minus symbol has an ASCII code of 2D in hexadecimal. So if I print it like this, it will say it's 45 because it is in base 10, but if you look at it in base 16 in hexadecimal, it is 2D. Is that okay so far? Let's try gibberish 2, okay? So we'll go ahead and rerun the program. This time we redirect from gibberish2.txt from the beginning, continue. First of all, did we get anything from scanf? Well, the file is not empty. We have to be getting something. So it said, yes, we read one thing into CH. The question is, what did we read into CH? Now, this is a tricky one because I think in gibberish 2 we have the digit 1 on the first line and an ONE spelled out on the second line. So what do you think is in CH at this point? Okay, but when you say 1, you have to be more careful now. Are we talking about the value 1 or are we talking about the character 1? The character 1 is correct, not the value 1. Okay, because when we print it, it shows 1, okay, but it's in single quotes, which means it is the ASCII code of 1 as a digit. But the digit 1 has an ASCII code of 49 or 49 in decimal, which is 31 in hexadecimal. In other words, if you want the printer to print out the digit 1, marker, it's right here. If you want a printer to print out the 1 as a digit on a piece of paper, you are not going to send 000000001 to the printer. You are going to send the ASCII code of 1, which is 31 in hexadecimal, which also basically means the character 1 is 00110001 as a binary number. Because we have 3 here, we have the 1 here. Is that okay so far? Can everybody differentiate between the value 1 from the ASCII code of the digit 1? 1 is only useful, the ASCII code is only useful for display, printing, and communication purposes. The value 1, on the other hand, is useful for calculation purposes. Is that okay? All right. So just to make this complete, we're going to print in hexadecimal. In fact, it is 31 in hexadecimal. All right. So what do you think is the purpose of this little exercise? I mean, I ran this particular program for a reason. The reason is because we want to recover from error. In other words, if this program is, if you're writing an interactive program, you're asking for a number, somebody enters some gibberish like letters and names and whatnot. You cannot just say, oh, okay, this program is going to exit right now. That's not going to work, right? Especially if you're writing a web application for Wells Fargo Bank. Okay, if someone puts in something other than number, you just say, I'm quitting. You know, that web application is not going to go anywhere. So what you need to do is to find out, okay, this is not a number, and let me see if I can get to the end of the non-number thing, and then look at the number again, look for a number again. That's why we have this little chapter here, or little module here, because what we need is a way to quote-unquote clear the junk in the standard input. In other words, if you want to read numbers and you encounter something that is not a number, just try to get past that. How do I get past that? Well, that's the code to get past it, okay? This code here is how you do what you do to get past one character at a time. Okay? If you're not reading what you're supposed to be reading, if you do this, it will get past one single character. Then you try again to see if you can get a base 10 number. If not, do this again and keep going. We are not going to talk about cin just yet because we have not talked about cin in general. So at this point, we just focus on the scanf approach. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, never mind, I misinterpreted.
Huh?
Oh, never mind, I misunderstood.
Say again?
Never mind, I just misunderstood.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. All right. So the the C-in approach, you don't have to worry about it just yet, but this is what we do in order to process, to skip something in a file, so that we can say, oh, I'm supposed to read a base 10 number, but I'm not seeing a base 10 number just yet. That's okay. Skip if it is something other than a base 10 number. So every time you skip, you have to retry again to read as a base 10 number. If it is not successful, do it again. So we'll continue this discussion on Wednesday of how to recover when you discover an error when you're processing an input file. Yep, go ahead.
Just to clarify, you don't want us doing this on the homework though. You want it to return
That is
errors.
correct. You do not do this in your homework assignment. In your homework assignment, if you attempt to read the base 10 number and you're getting something other than a base 10 number, just stop. Stop and report it as one specific exit code from main. All right? So I'm hoping this will get you enough stuff to get started with your homework assignment. If you have any questions regarding the homework assignment, bring those in on Wednesday. All right. So I'm going to stop the recorder at this point, and